What if I told you that through language people could be subjugated? What if I told you that your identity is linked to your mother or native tongue? What if I override your language? Would you be the same person, thinking and valuing things the same way? One of the quotes used in Metal Gear Solid 5 says that, "It is no nation we inhabit, but a language. Make no mistake, our native tongue is our true fatherland." Metal Gear Solid 5 is about the significance of language and the futility of revenge, and how those two can transform one into something as illusory as a phantom. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. This video will talk about the ending of Metal Gear Solid 5, and if you do not care about spoilers or have not completed it, you have been warned. I will say no more on this. Any gaps in information, check the other two videos or complete the game. I will assume you have a conversant knowledge of the story and are aware about the ending. The reception of Metal Gear Solid 5. The ending has been mostly received negatively, with many people accusing Hideo Kojima for not giving any finality, clear end, or resolution to the story. The majority of players felt the game was cut short and that they have been duped with an incomplete game, with the second chapter mostly consisting of replays of the first with slight modifications and twists, with chapter 3 being cut out the game and available as a cutscene for those that got the collector's edition or uploaded it to YouTube. Frustratingly, we do not find out how the main character of the installment gets to where he is in Metal Gear 1. The game is not strictly speaking a missing link that ties everything together, as was stipulated in the pre-release trailers. Or is it? I think the overall story of the game was in fact a good send-off to the series. It took me a while to appreciate what the story actually did, but after thinking about it, I would say it is in the same ballpark or league as the story in Metal Gear Solid 2, which took people years to figure out. And when that happened, Metal Gear Solid 2 was hailed as a postmodern masterpiece, which told the player a story using the medium itself. You see, the problem is that in order to really show the brilliance of the story and ending, we need to discuss a few things. 1. The significance of language in Metal Gear Solid 5. 2. Meme selection through information and language control, how the ball started rolling towards S3 and the Patriot AI. 3. How language was even used to subjugate the player and seduce them with a lie. 4. The futility of revenge and the war of interpretations. Language is the roadmap of a culture. It tells you where its people come from and where they are going. Language shapes thoughts and emotions, determining one's perception of reality. Humans are very much at the mercy of the particular language, which has become the medium of expression for their society, rather than it being about objectivity. Language conveys meaning. When we speak to another, with our choices of words, we try to paint a picture in their minds. Vice versa if it's a conversation between two people, bouncing pictures back and forth. We also use it to interpret and create thoughts, and this can also mean that it can be used to further one's objectives or desires. Hence, the art of persuasion, for example. It is achieved using carefully considered language. There are many ways something can be expressed. How effectively you express something depends on the use of language. Saying something in one way can make someone upset. Saying it in another way can achieve a different type of response. Language can not only be symbolic, but achieve many things. And the game has countless examples of this. When Skullface reveals his reasons for doing what he does in Metal Gear Solid 5, he makes the point about the significance of language. Quote,
"I was born in a small village. I was still a child when we were raided by soldiers, foreign soldiers. Torn from my elders, I was made to speak their language. With each new post, my masters changed, along with the words they made me speak. Words are peculiar. With each change, I changed too. My thoughts, personality, how I saw right and wrong. War changed me, and not only my visage. Words can kill. I was invaded by words, burrowing and breeding inside me."
As can be seen, he draws upon his past experiences to show that it is more than just speaking another tongue. He saw English as a convenient tool Zero would use to subjugate people to unite them under what Major Zero thought was the will of the boss. Which is ironic, because Skullface thought a different type of language would unite the world better. What he often refers to a chain of retaliation. which was also the language Skullface tried to impose on Quiet, who decided to reject it willingly towards the end, refusing that identity and rhetoric altogether. The infant liquid snake would burst out with uncontrollable rage at anyone that would pronounce his real name, Eli. Why? Because that was the name and identity attributed to him by the scientists carrying out the L'Enfant Terrible project. It is what he is constantly rejecting, as he hates the idea of having his fate predetermined for him. The Red Band trailer for Metal Gear Solid 5 describes him as a boy who curses his own fate. When you get Eli and the other child soldiers on Mother Base, they are instantly told to abandon their military names for new ones. Eli rejected this and stuck to his Kikongo name, Nyoka Yamebembe. And I probably have butchered the pronunciation, but anyways, in English it's translated White Mamba. Again, language being central to one's identity. This was a clear example of its significance being established. Eli wanted his own identity. Code Talker mentions his childhood experience at a Native American boarding school, which attempted to dissolve his culture by forbidding him to speak Navajo. He said that to erase our words was like erasing our people. The school in question even went as far as to call him George, an attempt to erase his origins, that being a Diné boy. But he willingly takes the name of Code Talker because of what it represents. It is something he agrees with, and it interprets it as a lesson. Language can also be linguistic constructs, potentially becoming way more powerful than the truth behind it, like a concept. When you listen to the tape of a conversation between Ocelot and Phantom Big Boss, they talk about the origins of Revolver Ocelot's alias, Shalashaska. Ocelot makes the point that what's really important behind these concepts is that minds are being swayed, a swaying of the minds. Hence the quote from Ocelot, "That's our reality here, whether it's real or not. All that matters is that the concept has taken shape in their heads. Once people were convinced to you being that legend in the flesh, you were able to play along and act the part, as the concept was already formed in other people's minds, once again through a linguistic construct."
But you see how rumors and ideas about people can get out of hand fast. Once you create a character and put it out there in public mind, it warps and twists with every baseless rumor. And before you know it, all people see are phantoms. In my case, it works out just fine. I'm plenty used to working under aliases.
But with all that being said about language, the game alludes to a worrying situation, the fact that many languages are extinct or in danger from it. This is important because of the knowledge, wisdom, and differing perspectives we can lose. Let's look at some game examples. As Code Talker mentions in one of the tapes, different languages portray or convey different pictures, and with certain languages becoming extinct, so do concepts. And Code Talker uses the example of the word beautiful. He says that when said in one language, it expresses a different kind of picture to when you say it in Navajo. Like other Metal Gear Solids, the game is trying to be educational about something. During the end of Chapter 1, you get a quote that mentions the major languages of the United Nations, which alludes to a weird fact, that the major languages are only spoken by 5% of the world. This sparked a curiosity in me. If that is the case, why are there not more languages included? I then discovered this. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization's website has an atlas of the world's languages in danger. I have searched up several countries, including my native country, to see what languages are extinct or about to be. It was shocking and bewildering to see that so many languages are on the verge of or are actually extinct. The link is in the description if you want to play around with it. For those that are in the West, do not think your country does not have extinct or endangered languages. Please do have a look, it's quite interesting. Language carries so much importance to our culture and identity, it touches upon and connects with the next bit of the whole Metal Gear Solid story, particularly what was established in Metal Gear Solid 2, that being memes. It appears that Major Zero wanted to suppress literacy as well, so that differing ways of thinking or culture cannot arise and instead die or wither out, while his chosen language, English, is used to spread his codic control over the world. This is why he wanted to suppress literacy, If you couple that with the Patriot AI's S3 scheme we learn about in Metal Gear Solid 2, you get to see how the AI thought this was the correct interpretation of Major Zero's will. The idea that if you control the information that gets out to people, you also simulate their will and decision making. This is what the S3 plan was about in Metal Gear Solid 2, shaping people's lives and thoughts by controlling the information. See Super Bunny Hop for an excellent analysis about this. The link is in the description, once again. In a day and age where anyone can impart their trivial information and inconvenient truths online, you will only need to look on Facebook to see how many junk people spew out every day. And then you get to see the danger in it all. Things that don't really benefit humanity and still nevertheless being passed down generations. But before going on and continuing to confuse you, the important question is, what the fuck is a meme? Richard Dawkins, an evolutionary biologist, coined the term, and essentially it is an element of a culture or system of behavior passed from one individual to another by imitation or other non-genetic means. But I think the quote that I'm about to show you will help you better understand it. In a quote from his book, The Selfish Gene, it says, "Examples of memes are tunes, ideas, catchphrases, clothes fashions, ways of making pots or building arches, cultures for short. Just as genes propagate themselves in the gene pool by leaping from body to body via sperms or eggs, so memes propagate themselves in the meme pool by leaping from brain to brain via a process which, in the broad sense, can be called imitation. If a scientist hears or reads about a good idea, he passes it on to his colleagues and students. He mentions it in his articles and his lectures. If the idea catches on, it can be said to propagate itself, spreading from brain to brain. When you plant a fertile meme in my mind, you literally parasitize my brain, turning it into a vehicle for the meme's propagation, in just the way that a virus may parasitize the genetic mechanism of a host cell. And this isn't just a way of talking. The meme for, say, belief in life after death is actually realized physically, millions of times over, as a structure in the nervous system of individual men the world over." So he was basically, he's saying he was using the idea of life after death being an example of a meme, because it's passed on to so many people and generations, like an idea. Sounds familiar?
What is the most resilient parasite? A bacteria? A virus? An intestinal worm?
What Mr. Cobb is trying to say.
An idea. Resilient, highly contagious. Once an idea has taken hold in the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate. An idea that is fully formed, fully understood, that sticks. Right in there somewhere.
So we know that language can also contain, with it, memes. What language contains is very central to memetic selection, as memes are mainly communicated by language. Nevertheless, Metal Gear Solid 2 concludes that there is no such thing as absolute reality, and that ultimately we should decide things for ourselves, rather than have them predetermined by others, using memes, for example. But what does this have to do with the ending, Falcon? What the fuck? Well, we'll get back to this later. What is really interesting about the ending in Metal Gear Solid 5, by that I mean the final set of truth tapes, not just the cutscene, is that you see how the Patriot's AI slowly started coming about. When Major Zero sees Big Boss at his sickbed, he mentions how the Patriot AI will assume control after he is cognitively dead. But more on that later. Moving on to the next point. How language was even used to subjugate the player and seduce them with a lie. So now that we understand the significance of language and how it plays an important role to memetic selection, we'll move on to the great deception of the game at play. The idea that you are the legend himself. The ending reveals that you are really the medic and the chopper from Ground Zeroes, and that you are Phantom Big Boss, who Solid Snake encounters in Outer Heaven, back in Metal Gear 1. You see a time-lapse take place where the logo on the door changes from Diamond Dogs to Outer Heaven, and the sticker on the cassette tape has Operation Intrude on it, the same mission name Solid Snake embarks on in Metal Gear 1. You are able to embody the personality of Big Boss through hypnagogia and facial reconstruction. The character creation you make at the beginning of MGS5 is to establish and create something with your identity imprinted on it for this plot twist. It facilitates it. The real focus should be on what is said once Phantom Big Boss plays the tape. It ties to one of the central themes of the game, the significance of language and how it can subjugate people, including you.
Since ancient times, every civilization's ruler has had the same idea. When people unite under one will, they become stronger than the sum of their parts. And what do rulers use to bring people together? Language. This world will become one.
You see, the message was warm, and players have interpreted it as Hideo Kojima effectively saying that you are Big Boss, despite finding out that you were an ordinary, unremarkable person all along. The idea that someone like you was able to be the legend himself. That, essentially, the story is left with you. But I am not convinced about this, because in the post-credits, we hear Ocelot and Big Boss actually envisage Phantom Big Boss's death. What was said in the post-credits also suggests that they are totally cool with Phantom Big Boss being murdered. How much choice did Phantom Big Boss really have? Phantom Big Boss was used as a pawn, while the real Big Boss implements his plan. Ocelot says in the post-credits that there is only room for one boss. How can you get someone to sign up to such an absurd plot that involves them accepting a completely different identity and sacrificing their own? Language. Those that loved the ending because they felt it was Hideo Kojima passing over that Big Boss mantle to them were sucked in to demonstrate this point. You are not him. You were seduced by language. Yes, the mantle is handed over to you in a way, but people often overlook the implications and consequences. Quiet was an example of someone that refused to speak the language of vengeance, instead choosing a vow of silence, being what she says, the absence of words. Most of the players actually embraced the identity and language of Big Boss in the ending. What Big Boss says to you is, I cheated death thanks to you. Thanks to you, I left my mark. You have too. Writing your own history, your own man. I am Big Boss and so are you. No, he is the two of us together. It is ours. We can change the world together. Carry that with you wherever you go. Thank you, my friend. Your Big Boss from here on out. Phantom Big Boss smashes the original image of himself, instead seeing the true image of the real Big Boss, finally showing his full embodiment of the real Big Boss, abandoning his former one. Showing the sacrifice of his own identity and the subjugation by a ruler. His will essentially submitted to Big Boss through the use of language. And so, now that we know the ending retrospectively, how much of what you actually did can be attributed to you? None. It was all taken by Big Boss, and in the end, you are sentenced to die when Solid Snake comes to kill you. In one respect, it's kind of cool to feel that you will be killed in the storyline, but at the same time, this relies on you making yourself in the game. I did not, rather I made a different character, but still. When the first few trailers came out, we were told about how Metal Gear Solid 5 will primarily be about the player exacting revenge as opposed to anything else. In some of the trailers, you literally see that theme being exuberated. There have been many wise things said about the concept of revenge in history. Before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. Gandhi seemed to agree with him when he said, an eye for an eye only ends up making the whole world blind. After you inflict the same loss and damage to Skullface, Kaz notes that his pain has not been abated and that he still feels the lust for revenge. The game's story makes a beautiful point that even after enacting your revenge, you'll continue to feel that loss and pain.
Doesn't feel like this is over. And I'll never be whole again.
An awareness is stressed that you need to learn to live with the pain and move on, because revenge is destructive. In fact, you may find new things to focus your desire or revenge on, which is why Skullface is not a boss battle, so that you feel that yearning for revenge continue uninhibited in the characters. The malaise underpinned with a confusion as to what to do next. In fact, Skullface is a prime example. His lust for revenge has gotten to him so badly that he started focusing his need for vengeance on Zero, who he previously worked with for such a long time. Is this why we see Big Boss the way he is in Metal Gear 1 onwards? Are we looking for more meaning or cause for his villainy when that pain and quest for revenge is reason enough. The game does refer to them as demons, but we see that it is too late for the main characters, as the whole idea of a chain of retaliation has already parasitized their mind, which is why you see Skullface walking with Phantom Big Boss well after his death. Whether it is Skullface's chain of retaliation, or Major Zero's systematic and coded control of the world via language, memes, and information control, all are part of one conflict that has started since the boss's death back in Metal Gear Solid 3, a war of interpretations. Big Boss, Skullface, Zero, all fighting over what they thought the will of the boss was, and them trying to manifest it. Interpretation is key because it affects your language. That is what is used to achieve whatever it is you want to attain, a way of interpreting and creating thought. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why before you even embark on the journey of Metal Gear Solid 5, you are given that nihilistic quote at the beginning, that there are no facts but a sea of several competing interpretations. To conclude, Metal Gear Solid 5 was another great game with better mechanics, providing us with a never before seen fluidity in the Metal Gear Solid gameplay. The message and themes of the game were as educational, postmodern, and brilliant as ever. The only criticism was that fans were expecting a level of finality that Metal Gear Solid 4 gave them, but the problem with that is we already got that. But if I do accept that the game was incomplete, it still nonetheless has done something I think is remarkable. The send-off could have been much worse. But I commend the game because it sparked an interest in me about the significance of language, and if you should take away one thing from Metal Gear Solid 5, that is that you should be aware of the significance of language and think about what things are said and why. Think about what ends can be achieved through different uses of language, and try to be curious and have an open mind about other languages. You are led to believe you are one with Big Boss, and we already know that rulers attempt to unite groups under one will so that they become stronger than the sum of all their parts. In the end, you should choose your own language and never let anyone coerce or force you to do otherwise.